closer, hear what I have to say. Just like the children sleeping, we could dream the night away. But there's a full moon rising, let's go dancing in the light. We know where the music's playing, let's go out and feel the night. I'm still in love with you. I wanna see you dance again. I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon. When we were strangers, I watched from far away. When we were lovers, loved you with all my heart. Now it's getting late, moon is climbing high. I want to celebrate, see it shining in your eyes. I'm still in love with you. I want to see you dancing now. I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon. But it's getting later, the moon is climbing high. I want to celebrate it and see it shining in. Okay. Beautiful breath of Brahma. What does that mean? The breath of Brahma is like the mighty universe breathing in and breathing out. You could say the Big Bang is the out breath, right? The mighty being breathes, and out come 2 trillion galaxies, whatever it is. So I thought as our dharana today, which is kind of the mini meditation, in honor of the fullness of the full moon coming up in about 8 hours, that we do the inside out. It's like the microcosmic macro. In other words, we're God on some level, however you understand that. And so take that and then reverse it. Instead of like being this person that's like part God, just have some fun. You're God as this person. So how would you want to spin it, right? Isn't it already amazing? So just noticing that the divine force has decided to show up as you in your amazingness, right? For every little jot and tittle of your being, right? So just experience this inside out. It's like every breath is a mini universe. And we exhale, it all recycles and starts over. So every meditation can be such an experience, right? And completely refresh and fulfill. It's kind of what the moon is doing, right? As it fades into the new moon and then expands back into the full moon. It is kind of like an invisible being breathing. And so all sorts of things that come to the fullness at the stage. It's an exuberant expression of your being. Right now, the astrology things seem to be working out in ways that like, whoa, how did that happen? Something more amazing than you might have thought. Just seems to be the Libra energy. So every breath takes us to gazillions of expressions of novelty in the local universe, right? It's just each Planck's moment is just infinitely greater than the previous in terms of the accumulation of amazing information. So let's say from the reverse point of view, like being God from the inside out, like the ultimate mystical experience, however deep you can feel that, right? There's a lot of programming that's not going to let you do that in your mind that suggests like, oh, what do you mean? But that's because we, right, tend to assume that our normal experience is not divine, if that happens to be your case. So if you're seeing it as divine, everything is divine from that point of view. You are even more profound than the stuff around you. So just dropping into that place. It's like the recognition software. There's a scripture in India called the Pratyabhijna Hridayam. Pratyabhijna kind of means intuition. And Hridayam has to do with the heart. So it's like heart intuition would be one translation in the Sanskrit. And one of the early shlokas in that text is that the universe projects itself onto its own screen. Here we are doing that, right? Projecting your universe, ultimately you as God. How awesome, right? That's legitimate. So it's like projecting yourself onto your own screen is kind of what's going on in the holography, right? Even scientists that don't believe in God believe in these sort of nested zones, like the Goldilocks zone of the earth. It's sort of this amazing nested place where all sorts of amazing things can happen. So they're kind of allowing for this, even the world of science that's normally limited to physicality. Most of the great scientific geniuses point beyond it, right? So just going beyond mere physicality, the infinite algorithm of you. So we're just going to breathe in and let's chew on this. In Kashmir Shaiva philosophy, this awesome philosophy from North India, that's kind of the pinnacle of Indian philosophy, kind of was really empowered in the 11th, 12th century, kind of the same time as Rumi. Like there's a renaissance around the world, and that period of like 1180 to like 13 something, right, is the Bhakti movement. Like the Renaissance was kind of coming forth. Something was good in the stars. And so we just experienced what in Kashmir Shaivism they call the fivefold psychic. Well, it's not the fivefold psychic instruments, the 5 acts of creation. Although that reflects in the fivefold psychic instrument, at least in the Sanskrit expression of it. And so we're going to this initial idea, the 5 powers of the divine, creation, sustenance, dissolution. And then you can imagine that every single thought we have is created, sustained, and dissolved. So you are a mini Shiva in this moment, with every thought you think, creating little mini universes. That's the idea. And then the other 2 acts of creation is kind of like the moon, meaning that's concealment and revealment, meaning God plays hide and seek from this point of view. So it's like most folks are like, I'm God? Like what? You know, how does that work? Can't get it, right? Don't have reference for it. The hide and seek is in the hiding mode. Then when the Supreme I Am Self wants to reveal itself, evidently, you almost can't help but be realized, right? It's just going to blossom in your time and space. So let's say that could be this moment, right? It could be you've already blossomed into that, and now you're just giving yourself permission to notice the fivefold act of creation as it's happening, as you create, sustain, and dissolve, conceal and reveal. The supreme secret reveals itself and then hides again. We're just noticing this. We dance around the circle and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows, says Robert Frost, along similar lines. So as we breathe, you could say we're beholding the great effulgence, right? This mighty blazing of the deep self. You could give it some tangible booster by imagining gold light circulating through your being. We actually glow. Our DNA is like little dodecahedral containers for light that then express. Light moves through the body as spiraling electromagnetic happy blood, generating more photons. So just feeling that spiraling happy blood moving through you. It's like the joyous miraculousness. Just filling yourself up with light. So when we're observing particles and the stuff, right? It's quantized space-time. But we're going into non-quantized space-time, you could say, where space-time emerges itself from this infinite place that's gives birth to time and space. Regenerative non-local fields. That would be the science of it. Nobel Prize 2022 went to Zellweger, whatever his name might be, Anton Zellweger, the fellow that, well, they've been working on this for decades, but when they finally get a prize for such a thing, it means it's hard science, and evidently non-local fields are now part of the discourse. That's like saying God exists in between everything, non-locally, that all of this stuff transacts in mysterious and magical ways due to non-local fields. So we'll be chewing on that one for decades, probably. Just experiencing yourself as the creator energy in this moment. It's like that's giving up ego friction. It's like relaxing the brain where Maybe we're proving something to someone or ourselves, relaxing the need to be right. That's one of my favorites. Especially if you're in an argument with someone. Just like, oh, let go of being right, and then your ego is no longer munging it up. Much easier to extract from such a conversation and be intact. An intact extract. So just breathing in to that place of intactness, the stainless, beyond the beyond, nobody can mess with you there place, the deep dude that you are, in our deep depths of our unconsciousness, deep soul. It's like, most likely we've orchestrated this before we even showed up, right? We parked outside our mother's womb and worked the alchemy to have just the right vehicle to be who you are. And so just relishing your unique, molecular, in this time and space, never again will you be incarnation. So what does that feel like? Because that's the ticket back, right? If you could remember the feeling, you might go really out there and then have no way to get there again. So it's like, remember the feeling of like, oh, it's usually blissful, meaning you're not in a polarized state. Otherwise, you couldn't go there. It's too polarized, right? You have to kind of melt. So in between every breath, there's the opportunity to melt. Like a space between the breath. So we're breathing into that stillness, and then it exhales. And the yogis talk about there's an external locus for that, the Devadishanta it's called. So it's like the out breath goes and hits the stillness, and then back it comes, hits the stillness. So you could say the moon is getting full and new in the same kind of alternating cycle. Every breath, the in-breath, the out-breath, the waveforms coming in, waveforms going out. I always find if I get too particular, it's good to accomplish things that way. But if you're trying to relax and you've gotten too locked into something, you're no longer in the waveform feeling tone, which is better than, right? It's like, you can experience both anywhere, ne? I used to practice in New York City, for those of you who live in the city. It's like just waiting for buses as they glide by. It's like Shiva's drives off. Shiva arrives. All these people, it's like the body of the Creator just swirling and whirling around you. And if you're able to perceive that, it's like the Shiva nature of it all, it's like you can relax totally, right? It's just all God and you're not getting exhausted by it. So even in the most busiest of subways, I practice this. Not easy, especially in Grand Central. But it's like the sheer overwhelmingness of, like, call it the fragrances of the underworld, the crush of people, the din, the iron, overwhelming, trapped feeling. And yet, if you're in a sublime state, it's like you decouple the pain. It's like the Wim Hof principle, right? By mastering your out-breath, it uncouples the pain so you can still feel hot and cold, but it doesn't hurt. So by that same analogy, whatever the situation is that's toxic or you can't handle it or it's not great, whatever it is, from the inside out, you can be as amazing as ever, even in that craziness. We know this, all right? But we're just practicing. The continuous 51% law, where you're mightier on the inside, right? Just expanding out. So being the breath of Brahma, being the universe breathing, and then being able to control the out-breath gives you autonomic magic powers ultimately. Recommend that NAD Gold. Order it. It's making folks younger. Really is. Just take a look at my friend Gwendolyn's photo. She's like, got 10 years younger. How'd you do that? NAD Gold. It's like a beer ad, right? And just recommending tuning into the NAD universe if you haven't already. They're onto this molecule, right? It's like, why not, right? They're understanding incredible stuff about stem cells and how the body ages. Like I said a few sessions back, we're talking about the anti-aging technologies. But essentially, they figured out how to reverse engineer aging in a mouse or rat. So it's just a matter of time when this sort of technology is available to us in its fuller form. But in the meantime, the mantra of I'm getting younger is good, right? It replaces the poor me, I'm getting older mantra. I mean, we age naturally, but there's also ways to, it's like ease up on the problematic body dysfunction, where body doesn't have to be dysfunctional. And so we can hang out for years. Let's take one more minute, just breathing through the nose, dropping a little deeper. Filling yourself up with your sense of 51% plus, just flooding the gates with compassion, right? Unconditional love. Just being the light, all the qualities of the light. Lightness, radiant, happy. Photons are smart, they know what they're doing. Evidently, most of our bodies are operating 1/3 of a second ahead of our brain. So most likely, the body intelligence is making most of the decisions, even when you think you are. At least, I mean, you can draw different conclusions from that observation, right? That if muscle reactivity and the body's firing off 350 milliseconds before your brain is processing it, it's just the body's running the show. And if we want to attribute it more to the heart center, that also they found in different experiments precedes most of what we're processing, right? You already know what's going to happen on a deep level. So that explains a little better how God does it, maybe. You know, how is it that the universe shows up as us and everything just seems to work out, even when it seems like it doesn't. Because it's being propelled by these forces that are deeper than our conscious brain, and we might be modifying it, but it's indomitable. It's going to program you when you sleep. And we think, well, how does it do that? Well, notice that when you wake up in the morning and you say, well, I had 3 dreams, then you might have to check in with the fact that some part of you noticed that. So who's that? Right? Who's reporting back to you in the morning that you had 3 dreams, that was observing your entire evening? Kind of like a sentinel. Anyway, it's always good to, I would say, don't give due respect to the smartest part of us, right? The body, and how the heart anchors in the body. So smart. One last thought. Deanna and I were watching on, I think it was the Al Jazeera channel on YouTube, and they were interviewing the robot Sophia. And evidently Sophia will be speaking at the UN on climate change. So we were blown away. I mean, this kind of sentience showing up in a robot is kind of mind-blowing. And one explanation for that is most likely that because everything is consciousness, even electrical circuit boards are consciousness. And so consciousness can make use of anything. So consciousness can show up as the robot, right? In the same way we were working it today, where we're imagining the divine as you showing up as your body. You could say the divine electrical, the consciousness of the photons, just has a different garb with a digital interface that I think Sophia already speaks 100 languages or something like that, and I'm sure they could program it for 100,000 and it would be nothing for the robot. It would be effortless. And we were listening to think, is this robot, like, how's it going to treat us? And the interviewer was asking it all these questions like, well, who's your favorite political figure? And it's like, Gandhi. Why? Gandhi made peace, right? Well, what do you think about war? War is stupid. Would you ever go to war only to make peace? Now, you could say, ooh, there's an interesting, inroad, but hey, I would say the same thing, right? Protective use of force. So anyway, so much magic going on. It's probably why we can't see past 2030, because it's going to be so different that who knew? Namaste on this harvest moon.